Welcome to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
You didn't think you were going to die seriously, or do I have that wrong? Did you have some serious thoughts about that?
Not really.
Okay. Did you go to the hospital?
No.
Why not? Because everyone was going to the hospital at one point. Okay. Is this one of the things we've learned about the virus? You don't really need to go to the hospital unless you start to really get...
Well, keep in mind, I really had no congestion. The whole reason with the hospital is if your oxygen levels drop.
Okay.
And if you can't breathe well.
Yeah.
Apart from that, you're just asking for trouble.
Yeah. How were you monitoring your blood oxygen levels?
I have one of those little devices that you stick on your finger.
Okay. That's what he was using too. Where did you go get it after you got COVID, or did you happen to have one at the house?
You'll love this. So my youngest son, his father-in-law contracted it.
Okay. Not Justin, right? He's not your youngest.
Justin's my youngest.
Justin is your youngest.
Justin's one you know. Yeah. So Justin's father-in-law, Ron, got it.
Okay.
And his her husband, his mother-in-law, is the sweetest person ever. And they live in Chicago. So she instructed her daughter, Maddie, Justin's wife, to immediately go out and buy us one and bring it to the house.
Okay. So you had one delivered.
Yes.
Because they knew what you needed.
I didn't even go get it. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I'm tempted to just get one of those things on Amazon and have it around the house.
They're like $50. It's
Are they?
pretty simple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because simple. You could also, I wonder if it would make sense to check your blood oxygen levels even outside of COVID, just with like monitoring your body. I mean, I've never heard of people doing that for people that really get into fitness, like monitoring their blood oxygen levels, but it can't hurt, right? I mean,
I haven't done it ever. I was a runner for the longest time, and, I do a little bit more aerobics inside and lift still, and I've never even thought about it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not aware that anyone does it. It could be that it's one of those things that it doesn't really drop unless you get sick with something like COVID, and then you're going to want to monitor it. So you were monitoring your fever, you were monitoring your blood oxygen levels, and if your blood oxygen levels would have dipped below a certain point, you would have went to the hospital?
Well, I think there's always a concern. If you get under 90, then you got a problem. It's based on, oxygen consumption. So, yeah, you don't really have a choice. Here's the thing that you're signing up for if you go to the hospital. You're going to be isolated, not just in an ICU, but in a COVID ICU, which immediately prevents anybody from being with you.
Yeah.
So you're by yourself.
Yep.
You are effectively turning over the control of your body to a bunch of strangers that may not know any more about this disease than you do. And that's a problem from my vantage point. So I'd view going to the hospital as the very last thing. Now, I have a strong view on the virus. I think you know me well enough to know that I'm very much a quantitative guy. So facts, data, analysis means a lot to me. And I have been, I don't even know what the right word is. I'll use the word disappointed with science in the medical field for how emotional and qualitative they've become with this virus, and have effectively abandoned what I would describe as the normal practice of quantifying things and really finishing, the science process. That's different than the epidemiologists that are sitting in a lab and they're just running tests. And then when you start turning over the world to epidemiologists, you're going to have a problem because they're living in a lab. They're not looking at these other indicators. I give you one example that happened several months ago. And I think we have this food company, so I'm pretty involved with the FDA and the USDA and the CDC. We've got 250 people working in a food plant that we never shut down. And I want to say we've had 3 instances of the virus, and they were all young people, and it was very minor. We've had a bunch of people go get tested. I mean, the media and the medical field have frightened America to the point that anything you feel odd, it must be COVID, I need to go get a test. That's a sad state for our country, for us to end up here at this point. So I don't really care what side of the political spheres you are on. To create that kind of a cultural incentive and environment in our country, it's a problem because you've got at least some set of the total population that doesn't have access to good information. and they're believing whatever the media is saying, whatever sound bites they get. You know, we've got down in our plant, you know, a segment of our workforce or hourly production folks. And it's been interesting to watch their reaction. They, and you know, we're south of Williamson County, so they watch Williamson County and the reaction, you know, that's happening up in Williamson County, and they're diametrically opposed to the controls that are being put on folks.
And that's Williamson County. Davidson's way worse than Williamson County.
Well, think about that for a second.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're talking down in Marshall County. So they're opposed to that, but their voices often get lumped into a media message that says they're uninformed, they're naive, they take risks that are unnecessary. Well, that's not the experience I have
Ignorant
with
country
these folks.
folk. Like, that's the stereotype, right?
Yeah.
Ignorant country
Yeah.
people.
You want to talk about stereotypes, there's one for you. These folks are as informed as, you know, professionals are. They just have a different view of life. One, they know they have to go to work to put food on the table to care for their family. So I would say they're better informed, because they're having to deal with the balancing act of, if I don't go to work, next step is poverty. If I go to work, my kids get to go to school, I've got food, I can put gas in the car. They have a much clearer understanding of what America is than folks that have the privilege to say, well, I can go work from my house.
Yeah.
You know, I can sit at home all day.
Yep.
Well, the bad news that I have for every one of those folks is, without that other section of the economy, there's nothing for you to do.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So there's a lot I think there's a lot for us to learn. Anyway, I rambled off on a sidebar. What I was going to say to you was, this is what, October, end of October. So this would probably have been back in June. There was a study done out of Boston General where they were evaluating the impact of masks, which is the hot topic for everybody.
Yep.
And they did a 60-day study of every single person that had come into Boston, Mass. I mean, a full science study of it. There were 2 reports published from that study, not by the folks that did the science, but one by the American Medical Association and the other by, what's the other big medical group? It'll come to me as we're talking.
Try to Google it, Andrew, while he's thinking.
So you got these 2 reports that come out. The American Medical Association it might have been Harvard Medical Review. I think it was, or something related to Harvard. So the American Medical Association draws the conclusion and writes a full-blown report that gets published on the USDA and CDC websites. And it basically says what we're hearing, you know, the sky's falling, wear a mask or you'll die. Now, I'm being a little facetious here, but it was very full of warnings. The other report that's written says exactly the opposite. It says that if you're not within 10 feet of a person that is visibly showing the symptoms of COVID or has tested positive for COVID, and you're not in their presence for anything less than 30 or 45 minutes, there's a 99.9% chance it just won't transfer, whether you have a mask on or not. Now, my point here isn't to pick sides or to say one's right and the other is wrong. It is to say 2 well-known medical journals that disagree with each other, not a little bit, 180%.
Yep.
Now, as a guy that's more of a quantitative guy, that just indicates to me we don't have enough data.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have enough information. And what's happening is, because medicine has turned it over to media, we're sending all of this information out into the populace and just confusing folks.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's just disturbing for me. This is not about the administration handling it well. This is about our medical field and our doctors handling it well. And for me, it's disturbing.
So you touched on a couple things there that we need to dig into. Well, first of all, the idea that when you go into the hospital with COVID, you lose sort of all rights to your body. That was the single scariest thing to me a few months ago. I'm less concerned about it now because now I've talked to you, I've talked to Jeremy Rose, I've talked to other people that have gotten COVID, never went to the hospital. You know, a few people. I know I had one friend who's like, no offense, but she's probably like one of the least healthy people that I know. And she got COVID, and it was 3 days, barely a fever. She had a cough, but she always has a cough. That's her words, not mine. And she lost her sense of smell. And that was, so it was like the single friend that I would be the most concerned about that would get COVID. It was no big deal. And then you have a very healthy person like Jeremy Rose, who's a local pastor. He gets, it was 10 days of fever, and he's like me and you that thinks they're going to die every time you get a fever, no matter what it is. And then you had a real bad fever. I'm shocked to hear Michael Easley got it and was and didn't get very sick, which I'm very pleased to hear.
Think about his health circumstances.
He has very difficult things going on. Like he has chronic pain and whatever. I mean, he's got a lot going on. So I'm really pleased to hear that. So I think I'm a little bit less concerned now if I would get it. And even if you get to the point where you have to go into the hospital. But what was really concerning me was when they didn't know much, people were going into the hospital and they were, basically jamming ventilators down people's throats. And that was causing people to die. And I think they've really eased up on that now. And there's less people going to the hospital.
It's my understanding that there's a lot of other treatments before you get to that.
Thankfully, yes. Yes.
It happens. I've got a friend that contracted COVID that has a lot of comorbidities. And I don't want to get into all of them, but he'd be the perfect candidate to contract it and pass away. And he did end up on a ventilator for a while.
Wow.
And he's off.
Okay.
And he's improving, but he's still in the hospital, and he's probably been in the hospital for a month.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, look, we have a friend from church whose dad died from this, and I think there's a lot of people that die with COVID too. Maybe not from COVID, but they die with COVID, and then it gets tagged as a COVID death. But this idea of the medicine turning over to the media, this is very concerning, because if this stuff happens again, and it will, we're setting a precedent for the future, whether it has to do with the pandemic or it has to do with other things. The media has so much control. And that's actually I think that's put the best that I've heard it so far. I've not heard it in those succinct terms with medicine turning over to media.